Not successful enough. So now you should see a nice full screen of the slides I just slapped together earlier this morning, so they're quite rough. Yeah, so thank you for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good late evening to all of you in the different parts of the world. I would like to present my paper, Relationship Status, Its Complicated Digital Humanities Methods and Systematic Theology. And I have to apologize for it's a rather dry paper, so I try to spice it up a little bit by giving all the sections handsome names. And if you get all the sci-fi references, then you can pat yourself on the shoulder for that. And I would like to introduce my paper shortly. So there's an introduction and an outline. I have two major parts in it, which I will get into more details right now. But first, I would like to bring us all together back to the wide away year of 2018 with a lengthy quote from Clifford Anderson. And he says, he writes, observers frequently note that religious studies scholars have not kept pace with researchers in other disciplines in the application of digital humanities methods. This point applies a fortiori to theologians. Theologians have shown scant interest to this point in the tools for linking data, mapping, network analysis, text mining, and visualizing information that are fueling digital scholarship in other disciplines. My suspicion is that theological scholars may appreciate what their colleagues in other disciplines are doing, but see them as irrelevant to theological inquiry. If you can, as you can see, this seems to be quite pessimistic for the relationship between the digital humanities and theology in general. But I also have had the opportunity to read the paper from Damien and Jan, and I think I have to agree with them that this could be debunked, could be considered debunked in a certain way. But I asked myself, how about systematic theology? For I am not sure whether I see quite the vibrant engagement with digital methods as I can see in church history or exegetics. And there I have another quote, which I quote in my paper as well, from Matthew Robinson from back then in 2019, which was published alongside the aforementioned paper from Kyle and Jonas and Pete. And here I can quote, it remains the case that systematic theology has found little use for digital humanities in its teaching and research beyond the use of e-learning platforms and electronic library resources common to many humanities disciplines. Thus far, systematic theology has seen only very limited use for digital humanities tools in its teaching or research methods, even though it has recognized significant questions in the digital revolution poses for systematic theological reflection. So Robinson states that a systematic theologian should, if he is interested in digital humanities or digital theology, go all into the content part of inquiry and research, and not so much in this questions of how to do this. And it's equally pessimistic for the relationship between digital humanities and systematic theology in particular. So now I was wondering as to whether this is true actually. So in the end, we are not that different from other humanities disciplines, are we? So, and we might ask ourselves, is our speaking and thinking about this whole God stuff in some form computer proof or not? And then I thought, okay, well, I can just write a paper about this. And when I start writing my paper, I stumbled upon a little difficulty, and this lead me to write the second part, which is the main part of my paper. in order to utilize the H methods, it is necessary to to kind of define operations you do in your research. You have to fit them in a certain pattern of discreteness and digitality, and so you have to be quite clear what you're doing there. And this led me to the surprisingly not very broad discussed question, at least in the German context where I'm drawing from my research. So what are we doing in systematic theology anyway? And now I try to answer this first to get into my my question, whether I would like to address, which I would like to address in the first place. Then I started to work through a number of German textbooks which claim to introduce students to the wondrous world of systematic theology, and hoping to find some good descriptions on what systematic theologians do. And while I was able to find detailed explanations on what constitutes an argument in systematic theology and a bunch of insights, what are the contents and the shape of systematic theology, those introductions went quite shy when it comes to the question of methods. So I nonetheless used the hints I could gather from these textbooks and try to define some basic operations. I defined 5 of them, but I'm not sure whether this is an exhaustive list. And if you are happy to add some more, then I'm equally happy to hear them. So my 5 basic operations are on the side of deconstructing and understanding. First, the analysis of faith statements, and second, the analysis of theologically relevant texts. And I use the term texts here quite broadly to mean anything from a book to a film to a play to whatever you can whatever you can write down in the end. And I also say, okay, well, if I look at my own practice as a systematic theologian, I'm not just limiting myself to books of dogmatics and ethics, but also other texts which may not be theology text in the first place. So I say, okay, I should say theologically relevant texts to be broad and nice there. But we are not just only analyzing things, we also do something with this, even as systematic theologians. So we have the other side of creating and communication. And there I went to the place of ethics, and there you oftentimes have this idea of well, we have some problem like I don't know, growing crops, for example, or dealing with people who want to die, for example, and this may not be every time a theological problem in the first place. So what we're doing, we apply theological insights to non-theological problems, and this was my third basic operation. And then I said, okay, well, and also we write books and papers and this kind of stuff. So I think I should put down a basic operation of writing of text. And this basic operation, I thought, yeah, there is a twofold thing to be said about it. For on the one hand, when we write this text, I get ahead of myself. Sorry, I come to this back in a minute. And lastly, my last basic operation I propose is that we say, okay, as systematic theologians, we are trying to argue for a certain system of theological beliefs, of theological assertions. And I stress this idea of consistency to level it up with certain claims of truth, which I find less and less informative in a more and more pluralistic world, which I think is also something we can link back to our more and more becoming a digital connected world. So we become more and more aware of the different truth other systems hold. Yeah, well, and then I think, okay, now I have these basic operations, and now I can see whether or not I can put this my question, which I proposed first, onto this and say, okay, can we assert certain methods of the digital humanities realm onto these basic operations? And I said, well, some of them are might find it not as useful, especially the basic operations 1, 3, and 5. For this is mostly in the realm of sitting down and think about it. But the basic operations of 2 and 4, so the analysis of texts and the writing of texts, maybe there we can find a certain use of digital humanities methods. And my argument for the second basic operation, the analysis of theological texts, is they say, okay, well, in this regard, we are no different from an Anglicist, for example, who analyze Shakespearean plays. For what we're doing, we take our favorite theologian and we read into him and or her, and then say, okay, well, what can we learn from him? And we make hermeneutical approaches to this text. And then if we make hermeneutical approaches to this text, we might also engage in things like sentiment analysis or other kind of text mining tools. So why not? And then I went a little bit speculative and say, okay, well, but how about the writing of text? And there I say, okay, well, it could be interesting to see if there's any merit to draw from algorithmic informed recreation or recombination of texts that are already in place, and see if we can generate meaning through this form of algorithmic working through the texts and estranging the text for us. We all know it all too well. But I will totally agree if this is quite a speculative and shaky point, and say, well, it could be interesting to do this, but I'm not sure whether this will hold merit in the end. But I think this could be interesting to try it out. So I think this was a little perforce read through my paper. Thank you for sticking with me so far. And yeah, I think I just stop talking here.
Okay, thank you very much, Knut. Your respondent is Ximian Xu.
Hello, everyone. Thank Dr. Wormstädt for this fascinating paper, and my response was developed based on the full paper. What has systematic theology to do with digital humanities? With an emphasis on hermeneutics, Dr. Knut Wormstädt explores the possibility to deploy digital humanities methods to construct systematic theology. Dr. Wormstädt begins with a definition of systematic theology, which has two features. Firstly, as an academic discipline, systematic theology incorporates both ethics and dogmatics. Secondly, systematic theology is text-based. Then Dr. Wormstädt sums up two groups of operations in systematic theology. First, deconstruction and understanding. Second, creating and communication. The first group of operation includes the analysis of faith statements and theological relevant texts, which include not only the Bible, creeds, and confessions, but also theologians' writings. The second group of operation means applying theological insights to non-theological problems, writing theological texts, and constructing a consistent theological system. Dr. Wormstädt helpfully points out that digital humanities methods could be applied to systematic theology in the analysis of theological relevant texts, because the analysis of texts is common to humanities disciplines. By deploying digital humanities methods to conducting systematic theology, a systematic theologian's dogmatical emphasis, ways of writing, and changes over time will be reviewed. Dr. Wormstädt cogently proves that digital humanities methods can advance a systematic theologian's hermeneutical research. Here, I would like to raise a question. To what extent might digital humanities methods deviate a systematic theologian from comprehensive hermeneutical research? The interpretation of texts is not identical to hermeneutics. For example, according to Schleiermacher, hermeneutics must attend to the effects of the text, which are not reviewed through digital humanities tools. My concern is that the theologian's use of digital humanities tools may overwhelm her sensitivity to other factors that are essential to hermeneutical research. Moreover, Dr. Wormstädt contends that digital humanities methods can be used in the writing of theological texts. Algorithms can help to bring together theological relevant texts, which are different and even in tension. Of course, this practice can be thought-provoking and improve theological reasoning during the moments of writing theological texts. I suggest that in the writing of theological texts, digital humanities methods can be developed further to advance the systematic theologian's work. That is, bringing together different theological works is, in some sense, creating theological big data. Hence, the interaction between digital humanities and the systematic theology involves how digital humanities tools serve to create the big data of systematic theology, which is greatly voluminous, is highly varied, and is accumulated at greater speed. Such theological big data can help the theologian to work constantly on her project with Catholic, historical, and ecumenical concerns. To sum up, Dr. Wormstädt offers a convincing argument that shows how systematic theology can be digital humanities engaged. I would like to conclude my response with Dr. Wormstedt's argument, quote, "In the end, it seems that the relationship between systematic theology and the digital humanities methods remains complicated, but is far from hopeless," end quote. Thank you.